One page. 12 words. Total silence. Then Barron Trump's world exploded on live television. Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern. Every major network ditched their programming. No reruns. No game shows. Just this. Representative Jasmine Crockett, navy blazer sharp as her stare, sitting in marble halls that had witnessed empires rise and fall. She wasn't shouting. She wasn't even angry. That's what made it terrifying. CNN's cheerin' flashed. Breaking. Oversight Committee versus Trump officials. But nobody understood what was coming. Twitter buzzed. That morning, Crockett had teased a matter of public interest that cannot be ignored. No names. No hints. Just watch tonight. No filters. In Fort Lauderdale, 19-year-old Barron Trump sat alone. Private room. No aides. No family. Just him, the TV, and his father's legacy hanging like smoke in the air. He had no idea he was about to become the story. Jasmine adjusted her mic, leaned forward. Her voice cut through silence like a blade through paper. Chairman, I'd like to enter 3 communications. Extracted under subpoena. Verified. Time-stamped. Proving senior White House officials knew about offshore financial transfers. The Cayman Network. The room didn't just go quiet. It went dead. The chairman blinked. Hard. An aide started whispering frantically off camera. Representative Lanford from Arizona shifted in his seat like he'd been slapped. Jasmine opened her binder. Calm as morning coffee. What you're seeing isn't speculation. It's not gossip. It's not even classified anymore. Her eyes swept the room. Internal memos. Unreported transactions. Shell corporations in Delaware, Cyprus, and Panama. All linked to the executive office. All dated post-January 2023. The live stream audio crackled. Microphones caught whispers across the chamber. She owned the floor now. And she wasn't giving it back. This wasn't just testimony. This was warfare. Backstage, a CBS producer wiped sweat from his forehead, watching 3 screens simultaneously while barking into his headset. Keep cameras on Crockett. Don't cut to commercial. Something's about to explode. Across America, families stopped talking. Phones vibrated. Group chats ignited. The Cayman Network. Those words hadn't been said on national TV in over a decade. Now they were connected to the current president of the United States. Jasmine stared down the panel like a prosecutor addressing a jury. I didn't come here to make friends. I came to ask why nobody has explained this to the American people. Fox News split-screened. Trump's motorcade returning from Knoxville. No comment from press secretary. No tweets. Just silence. But silence was about to shatter. The committee chair called for recess, voice trembling slightly. Jasmine wasn't rattled. She closed her binder with surgical precision and stared straight into the live stream camera. Speaking directly to every living room in America. If nobody's asking the hard questions, then I will. If I'm wrong, prove me wrong. But if I'm not... She paused. The pause that broke the internet. Then I suggest we all start asking who we've been protecting, and why. Someone else had been watching. His reaction would change everything. When cameras returned from recess, the temperature had shifted. You could feel it through the screen. Crockett sat ready, folder in hand, like she hadn't just dropped a live grenade into American politics. This time, she locked eyes with Conrad Wellner, former National Security Liaison, special counsel to Trump. Gray hair, pinstripe suit, reputation for being unshakable. Tonight, he looked shaken. Jasmine raised a single page, held it like evidence at a murder trial. Mr. Wellner, May, you told this committee that to your knowledge, no off-book financial communications were ever initiated through the White House. Correct? Wellner cleared his throat. That's correct, Congresswoman. She nodded. Place the document on screen. Email. Time-stamped. Private server. Subject line. Routing Coordination Presidential Initiative. From field. Wellner's name. Gasps weren't needed. The silence said everything. Is this your email? That depends on the... Please answer directly. Your name. Your address. Wellner hesitated. That hesitation was a confession. Yes, that's my email. Perfect. Jasmine folded her hands like a chess master announcing checkmate. Then perhaps you'd explain why you forwarded encrypted routing instructions to Clearstream Holdings 48 hours after publicly denying knowledge of these transfers. Wellner's mouth opened. No sound emerged. His legal advisor whispered frantically. Cameras zoomed in. A bead of sweat rolled from his temple. America watched a man realize he'd been caught. Right now, Mr. Wellner, either you were kept in the dark and lied under oath, or you weren't in the dark and lied under oath. Either way, someone's about to be very unhappy. In Sacramento, college students huddled around a dorm TV. She just caught him live. A poli-sci major whispered. That's perjury. In Erie, Pennsylvania, a couple who'd voted Trump twice stared at their untouched coffee. If even half this is true, the woman whispered, leaving the sentence hanging. Wellner tried spinning. Those instructions were part of a pre-cleared initiative under internal economic strategy, never disclosed to oversight. Crockett interrupted like a courtroom objector. Never approved by Treasury. According to this statement. Signed 2 days ago. Another document. Wellner looked down. Didn't argue. The chairman leaned into his mic, voice lower now. Let's keep this professional, Representative Crockett. Jasmine didn't raise her voice. Didn't need to. With respect, Mr. Chairman, professionalism isn't the issue. Accountability is. Tonight's the first time someone's bothered asking why this administration moves money through channels we're not supposed to know exist. Every journalist watching knew they had their lead story. Newsrooms scrambled to verify. Meanwhile, Crockett held up the Treasury memo. I'm submitting this for the record. If anyone wants to call it fake, they're welcome to go under oath and say so. Nobody spoke. But while Crockett controlled the room, a different camera was rolling. What it caught would explode the story beyond politics. In the West Wing, tension crackled like electricity. Staffers paced. Phones glued to ears. Monitors flickered with C-SPAN, MSNBC, Fox feeds. Security moved with unusual urgency. Still no word from the president. But the private residence told a different story. Barron Trump sat slouched in a leather chair, alone in the media room. TV volume loud. Foot tapping. Fingers drumming. This wasn't his usual viewing, but tonight he didn't have a choice. His father wasn't here. Neither was Melania. They were upstairs, silent. Barron had seen Crockett's clips online. Usually her shutting people down with one-liners. But this felt different. This looked real. And that terrified him. She was reading from a memo about presidential directives requiring absolute discretion. The language was vague, but you didn't need a law degree to understand. These transfers weren't just side deals. They were authorized. Possibly directly. Possibly by the man in the White House. Barron's phone exploded with texts from classmates, cousins, people he hadn't heard from in months. Dude, is that real? You okay? Crockett is going off. Y'all need to answer for this. He swiped them away, but his hands were shaking. Back in the hearing room, Crockett owned the floor. One official requested delay. 2 others refused comment. The chairman looked like he wanted to disappear. The camera panned the panel, then cut unexpectedly to White House feed. Viewers expected a press secretary preparing statements. Instead, a feed operator switched early. Barron Trump. 3 seconds on national television. just long enough for America to see his expression. Pure panic. He stared at his phone, tossed it aside. His lips moved, no audio, but the body language screamed. Then, visibly frustrated, he stood up, ran hands through his hair, walked off camera. 3 seconds. That's all it took. On X, #Barron Meltdown exploded within minutes. Screen recordings spread like wildfire. Speculation poured in torrents. Was he reacting to Crockett's revelations? Something he knew. Something he'd heard before the broadcast? In the briefing room, reporters pressed for answers. Will the president address Representative Crockett's allegations? Is the White House confirming or denying the Cayman Channel? Why was Barron shown during live feed? Has he been briefed on any of this? Press Secretary Miranda Stokes stepped to the podium. No smile. No warm-up. The White House is aware of the hearing and claims being made. We believe Representative Crockett's assertions are theatrical and politically motivated. No evidence presented proves wrongdoing by the president. The words rang hollow, especially with clips of Wellner's nervous breakdown already viral. Inside the residence, Donald Trump stood by a window, arms crossed, silent. Melania sat behind him, expression unreadable. Earlier, she'd asked, "Did you know she had those documents?" He hadn't answered. A staffer knocked, entered slowly. "Sir, DOJ just called. They're asking if you'd make a statement within the hour." On air. Trump didn't move. And Barron's not answering his phone. He left the East Wing 10 minutes ago. Melania stood. Where'd he go? Not sure. But he looked upset. But before the Trump family could rally, Crockett wasn't finished. She had more. And the next document would hit even harder. No permission needed. The moment the gavel struck, Crockett reached into her folder and pulled out a sealed manila envelope. No drama. No pause. Just action. "I'd like to introduce this packet as supplemental evidence." She slid it to the clerk. Cameras zoomed as it opened. Copies distributed to the committee. Jasmine sat back, expression unreadable, eyes steady. Inside you'll find financial tracking logs intercepted by a whistleblower from International Asset Control. Dates span March through September this year. Recipients include shell companies tied to dissolved Nassau real estate groups. She paused. The pause that stopped hearts. One listed beneficiary appears 3 times as Donald J. Trump. The room went arctic. You could see it in the way people froze. Even rustling papers suddenly sounded deafening. Representative Bixler, longtime Trump loyalist from Idaho, narrowed his eyes. "Congresswoman, these logs, how do we know they're authentic? Anyone with spreadsheets could fabricate numbers." Crockett turned to him, unfazed. "That's why there's a forensic audit attached." Last page. The whistleblower isn't anonymous, Congressman. She's prepared to testify under oath. Dr. Loretta Nunez. 14 years internal compliance before resigning last month. Credentials verifiable. History clean. Bixler flipped to the audit summary. Stamped. Signed. Certified. Jasmine folded her hands. "Let me be absolutely clear. This isn't about disliking the president. This is about watching taxpayer money disappear into accounts we're not allowed to question. About public officials making private transactions that conveniently align with campaign policy changes affecting foreign trade." The chairman rubbed his forehead, voice tired. "Representative Crockett, are you making formal allegations of misconduct against the sitting president?" "No, Mr. Chairman." Her voice was ice-cold steel. "I'm presenting facts. The allegation makes itself." In a D.C. studio, political analyst Diana Holt interrupted live segments. "Hold on. Are we seeing account routing to offshore firms while the president issued executive orders on construction tariffs? This is textbook conflict of interest if verified." Back in chambers, Bixler tried again. "With respect, "We've seen political stunts before. I'd like to request recess until we verify these alleged logs." Before the chairman could respond, Jasmine held up another page. Heavy redaction marks. "That won't be necessary. This isn't just about transactions. It's about internal memos telling staff not to discuss them." She lifted the document higher. This particular page includes direct instructions from someone signed only as DT. "We traced the IP address when it was sent. Matches a private server used within Mar-a-Lago. That stopped everything." Reporters practically sprinted toward camera crews. Republican staffers exchanged glances. At least one member quietly slid their packet under the table, texting frantically. Crockett exhaled slowly, tone unchanged. "I don't care what side of the aisle you sit on. If this were anyone else, anyone, you'd be demanding answers. So I'm asking, what makes this person above that?" In the corner, C-SPAN caught Representative Cass from Iowa, another Trump ally, folding his arms and turning away. He wouldn't meet Jasmine's eyes. The chairman leaned into his mic. "We'll take 5-minute recess to review materials." But Crockett's words echoed louder than the gavel. "You can recess all you want. The documents aren't going anywhere." As chaos erupted, the camera cut back to the White House, where another storm was brewing. It was supposed to be background footage, B-roll of White House interior, while the press room prepared for late-night responses. But the camera cut early. The operator didn't realize the internal channel had gone live. There on screen, Barron Trump. Again. This time he wasn't sitting. He was pacing. The angle caught him in the Roosevelt room, phone in hand, mouthing words that couldn't be heard but were quickly interpreted by amateur lip readers across the internet. She wasn't supposed to have that. He stopped suddenly, stared at the wall-mounted screen. Jasmine Crockett frozen mid-sentence on paused hearing feed. His shoulders tensed. He looked like someone forcing himself to believe something wasn't happening. Then in one explosive motion, he hurled his phone across the room. It hit a cabinet with a loud thud. Clearly audible this time. The feed didn't cut in time. The moment was out. Too late to reel back. Within seconds, TikTok clips were being edited, slowed down, captioned. On X, #Barron Meltdown Part 2, he knew. White House cracks. Theories exploded. Some thought Barron accidentally confirmed the leak. Others believed his reaction meant he'd only just found out. Either way, it was raw, real, and it shattered the illusion of control the administration had tried projecting. Secret Service scrambled. 2 agents entered the Roosevelt room, ushered him out. One whispered into earpiece, glancing at cameras above. Downstairs, Miranda Stokes was already aware. A young aide had burst into her briefing prep. "Ma'am, the Barron feed went live." She looked up. "What part?" "All of it. The throw. The words." She didn't speak for seconds. Then calmly, "Tell networks to cut to holding graphics. Get the president on the line." But Trump was already in the Oval, watching it all. Hands on desk edge. Silent. Melania entered slowly behind him, watching the clip replay on mute. "He's just a kid. He's 19, Trump replied. "He knows better. He knows the truth," she added. "That's the problem." He didn't answer. In Los Angeles, popular political streamer Nolan Triggs was already reacting live, face wide-eyed, hand on chest. Okay. If Barron's flipping out like that, you know this ain't just smoke. This is fire. That kid has grown up in silence, and tonight he finally cracked. That was real. In Baltimore, an AP reporter covering the Trump family for years got green light to publish. Barron Trump caught in live feed reacting to hearing. Questions surface about what he knew. Meanwhile, in the hearing room, Jasmine hadn't flinched. A staffer handed her a folded note. She read it twice, set it aside. The committee hadn't returned yet. Cameras still rolled. Murmurs from inside grew louder as phones lit up with Barron alerts. "He's trending in 42 states," someone whispered near the door. Crockett leaned toward her aide, said quietly, "They're going to try burying that, which means we're getting close." She looked down at her last sealed folder, the one she hadn't opened yet. Back at the White House, Barron sat alone again. Secured family office. Half-eaten protein bar on the desk. Phone had been replaced, vibrating every few seconds. He picked it up. Text from unknown number. "You didn't think she had that. But she did. Time to decide where you stand." He stared at it for a long while. Deleted the thread. But it was too late. While the internet dissected every frame of his reaction, Jasmine was preparing to read something that would pull the curtain back on everyone. By the time the committee reconvened, the hearing room felt different. Gone were stiff formalities. Gone was the illusion this was just political theater. Everyone knew the stakes had shifted. The outside world had seen the cracks. Crockett was about to open the rest. She sat straight, both hands on the sealed folder. Voice steady, air thick with anticipation. Not because she raised her tone, but because she didn't need to. She looked like someone who already knew the end of the story. "Mr. Chairman, there's one final document I'd like to enter into the record." The chairman glanced up, still rattled. "Proceed." Crockett opened the folder. Pulled out a simple letter. 1 page. Hand-signed. The kind you don't send electronically. The kind you keep locked in drawers, hoping nobody ever sees. This letter was written by a former senior economic advisor, addressed to then Chief of Staff Harlan Breeze. Dated February this year. It outlines planned response strategy should Cayman transactions ever come to light. She raised it. The clerk stepped forward, distributed copies. The language is careful but not vague. It recommends mobilizing friendly media outlets, launching countersuits against whistleblowers, framing congressional inquiries as election year stunts. Representative Bixler leaned in, scanning the document, eyebrows raised. This wasn't financial data anymore. This was strategy. Intent. Crockett tapped the letter once, laid it flat. And there, paragraph 3, line 2. "We should anticipate resistance from oversight leaders, particularly from the representative out of Texas, known for her courtroom flair." She let the words hang. "That's me." The room stayed frozen. No paper shuffling. No coughing. No procedural muttering. They weren't just hiding it. They were planning for it. Prepping talking points, legal stall tactics, media angles, before a single question was ever asked. Her voice cut through the silence like a scalpel. "And that's why I'm not here for drama. I'm here for protection. This isn't about partisan games. This is about someone believing they could rig a system in plain sight because they assumed we'd all be too distracted, too tired, or too scared to say something." Then came the line replayed 1,000 times that night. "This isn't politics. This is protection." Social media caught it first. Cable news. Late-night hosts. Her face was on every news site within minutes. People clipped the moment, shared it with captions like, "Finally someone said it out loud," and "Crockett is the real deal." Inside the room, Wellner hadn't moved in 5 minutes. 2 aides tried whispering. He sat stiff, eyes on nothing. The cracks had become full fractures. Bixler pushed his mic button. "Congresswoman, I'll admit the letter raises questions, but it's still circumstantial. Nobody's proven these accounts were ordered directly by the president." Crockett nodded, calm as ever. "Fair point, Congressman. Which is why I'd like to read from a sworn deposition filed yesterday by Dr. Nunez, the compliance officer whose audit we introduced." She flipped open another folder. "While reviewing flag transactions between February and June 2025, I was directed via internal memo, attached to this deposition, to remove specific entries under Project Code 45 Echo. The memo stated the directive came from the top of the executive office and named the president explicitly as requiring absolute discretion. The room shifted again. This time nobody interrupted, so I'll say it again. Jasmine's voice was surgical steel. If I'm wrong, prove me wrong. But if I'm right, and these memos, emails, letters, and logs all point in one direction, then it's not just the president who needs to answer. It's everyone who helped him do it quietly. Outside, protesters gathered near Capitol steps. Handmade signs, flags, some chanting Crockett's name, others holding photos of documents she'd introduced. America wasn't waiting anymore. The chairman looked worn down. The committee will reconvene tomorrow morning for review of new evidence. This session is adjourned. Crockett didn't move, didn't speak. She sat there as the room emptied, hands folded, staring at nothing, like someone waiting for the second shoe to drop. But behind the scenes, Trump's closest circle wasn't just reacting. They were turning on each other. At 1:08 a.m., the West Wing conference room door swung shut. No cameras, no staffers. 5 people who'd built Trump's second term gathered around polished mahogany with tired eyes and fraying nerves. The president sat at the head, arms folded, silent. Melania stood behind him, arms crossed, quiet but watchful. Across from them, Harlan Breeze, former chief of staff, Winston Dre, longtime legal fixer, Sylvia Keir, media strategist. Nobody touched water bottles. Nobody sat comfortably. She's not bluffing, Sylvia broke the silence first. I've seen how Crockett moves. If she's holding evidence back, it's not because she's unsure. It's because she's building pressure. Breeze looked at Trump, who hadn't blinked. You told us those logs were scrubbed, sir. Trump leaned forward slowly. His voice came out like gravel. They were. That woman has someone inside. Winston cleared his throat. He'd worked Trump's legal angles for 2 decades. This wasn't his first panic meeting, but this one felt different. We need to assume everything. The memo, Project 45 Echo, came in routes, Mar-a-Lago server. It's all going public. She's not bluffing. She's cornering us. Trump stood suddenly, walked to the window, stared outside though it was pitch black. Floodlights on the lawn were the only things breaking through darkness. I want names. Someone leaked that memo. Sylvia pressed the folder in front of her. It wasn't leaked. It was subpoenaed. Loretta Nunez didn't go rogue. She built a case quietly, which means she had help. Someone inside Treasury, maybe even inside our transition team. Melania's voice cut in, firm and clear. This didn't happen overnight. Someone's been watching you for a while. You were too focused on midterms to notice. Trump turned sharply to face her. She didn't flinch. So what now? Breeze asked. We sit here and wait for DOJ to show up, issue blanket denial, and ride the news cycle until it fades. Winston shook his head. That worked in 21. Won't work now. Too many moderate Republicans are breaking ranks already. You saw Landford's face. He looked like he wanted to disappear. For the first time in the meeting, Trump looked tired. Not angry, just worn. Barron's outburst still hadn't been addressed. Nobody dared bring it up. But Melania did. You saw Barron. He didn't react that way to rumors. He reacted because he recognized something. Maybe from overhearing your calls. Maybe from what you told him. But he's not going to stay quiet forever. Trump sat back down hard. I'm not letting this family burn because of some freshman congresswoman with a binder and a microphone. Sylvia blinked. You're not just dealing with her anymore. You're dealing with a country that saw your kid have a breakdown on live television and then watched you say nothing, Winston added. And if even a single donor thinks you can't keep things quiet anymore, the war chest dries up fast. That struck a nerve. Trump slammed a palm against the table. So what? You all here to bail? Want to jump ship now? Fine. But don't pretend you didn't know what this job took. Nobody answered. In silence, he looked around the table at faces he'd trusted. Some for years, some just long enough to get through the next election. And in that moment, he could see it. Doubt. Not loyalty. Not strategy. Doubt. Breeze finally spoke, voice low. There's still time to control the narrative. But you can't just sit quiet. You have to go public. Explain the money. Blame bad advisors. Call it breakdown in oversight. Shift it before Crockett makes you irrelevant. Trump stared at him. You want me to look weak? I want you to look believable, Breeze said. Or else next week we won't be talking about subpoenas. We'll be talking about indictments. Melania left the room quietly. No words. Nobody stopped her. But outside the walls of power, people weren't waiting for official statements. They were forming their own conclusions. And the movement was building faster than anyone in that room could control. By sunrise, streets were stirring, not just with commuters. Across the country, people had gathered before dawn. Signs, phones, live streams. Walking toward courthouses, state buildings, congressional offices. Footage of Crockett holding that redacted memo, saying, "This isn't politics, this is protection," had struck a nerve. The public wasn't shrugging it off. In Tucson, lines of students and teachers formed along University Promenade, holding printouts of offshore routing logs like protest flyers. In Pittsburgh, union workers marched downtown wearing stickers. 45 Echo equals fraud stapled over work vests. In Fresno, retired Marine Kevin Dorman stood at makeshift podium outside City Hall, reading Jasmine Crockett's deposition into portable loudspeaker as passers-by stopped to listen. Cable news couldn't keep up. By 8 a.m., headlines changed hourly. Wave of protests erupt nationwide over Crockett claims. Trump inner circle divided as evidence gains credibility. Is 45 Echo the new Watergate? Even late-night comics, who'd gone off-air hours earlier, were releasing live streams from their homes. One host looked straight into webcam. You know what's wild? This isn't even a leak. This is a woman showing up with receipts and saying, "Y'all ready to grow up and read?" That's what this is. In Fort Collins, Colorado, a woman named Alice Langston was pouring coffee when she heard a customer say, "I don't even like her politics, but she's the only one up there not pretending anymore." That was the tone everywhere. People who hadn't trusted Congress in decades suddenly couldn't look away from a first-term representative out of Texas. Jasmine Crockett wasn't just trending. She was becoming something bigger. Online artists were turning her courtroom photo into posters. One image, a still frame of her lifting the redacted memo in that navy blazer, was downloaded over 2 million times in 12 hours. Meanwhile, the president's approval rating, last reported at 51%, began sliding fast. Internal polling leaked from National Republican Caucus showed 19-point drop in suburban voters. The memo wasn't just damaging. It was sticking. Back in D.C., Crockett's office was overwhelmed. Chief of Staff Rena Mills had stopped trying to organize voicemails and emails flooding in. Support, death threats, media requests, all poured into the same inbox. "We've got 25 networks asking for exclusives," Rena said, holding up printed lists. "Tell them no," Jasmine said, sipping coffee like any other morning. "All of them. I'm not doing this for headlines. Let the documents speak. The rest will come." She didn't flinch, even as security had been doubled, even as Capitol Police warned her not to travel alone. Inside a public school in Tempe, Arizona, a government teacher paused his lesson and played clips from the hearing. He turned to the class. "How many think the president should answer these allegations directly?" Every hand went up simultaneously. Conservative talk radio was in chaos. Some hosts defended Trump, blaming deep state theatrics. Others, particularly younger voices, urged caution. "If you think this won't affect the election, you're wrong," one anchor said. "This isn't 2016 anymore. People aren't laughing this off. They're paying attention." Behind the scenes, a quiet shift was happening in Republican offices across the country. Emails flew back and forth. Senate aides scrubbed older press releases. Key donors delayed transfers. Political consultants stopped returning White House calls. Not because they were sure Trump was guilty, but because the perception of guilt was already winning. And at the heart of it all was Jasmine Crockett. Not shouting, not pointing fingers, just standing there with papers nobody could ignore. "I'm not trying to be famous," she said during local radio interview that afternoon. "I just don't think the American people should be the last to know." But fame was coming anyway, and the more it grew, the more the White House had to answer for. Because silence, at this point, was starting to sound like consent. By late Friday afternoon, the Capitol swarmed again. Not with cameras, but with tension. Halls echoed with hurried footsteps, hushed phone calls, nervous silence of people realizing something irreversible had begun. Jasmine Crockett had arrived for closed-door follow-up session with key oversight members. Her presence alone drew attention. Reporters outside weren't yelling questions anymore. They were waiting, calculating. Inside the chamber, the committee was smaller. Several Republican members hadn't returned since yesterday's hearing. Staff noticed. So did the press. Rena Mills stood by the door, checking her phone for updates. DOJ sources had just confirmed anonymously to multiple outlets. Preliminary investigation was now officially open. Crockett hadn't even spoken yet. Already her evidence had triggered something federal. Across the building, Representative Cass, once reliable Trump defender, quietly stepped down from the committee. No press conference. Just a letter handed to staffers and quick exit out the back. He didn't want to be seen walking past Crockett's office. Even long-time political sharks could sense it. This wasn't noise. This was movement. As Jasmine entered the conference room, hush fell over the few members present. She placed files down slowly, took a seat, nodded at the chairman. "Before we begin," he said, "you should know DOJ will likely request full unredacted files within 24 hours. They're moving faster than expected." Crockett gave a slight nod. They should have moved faster 3 years ago. A staffer passed her a folder. Inside, formal letter from Attorney General Leighton Hayes requesting cooperation in confidential pre-indictment review. She read it once, twice, then slid it back. "They'll have everything I've got. But I'm not hiding behind closed doors. The people saw this live. They deserve the rest too." Meanwhile, in a town outside Omaha, a man named Trent Vocal sat on his porch holding a yellowed MAGA hat. He was 63, voted Trump twice, donated $100 during the last campaign. Now he watched hearing clips on his iPad, not saying a word. His daughter came out. "You okay?" He shrugged, then finally, "I didn't think she'd be the one to break it open. But she ain't wrong." Across the Potomac, the White House remained tight-lipped. Press pool had been moved twice. Trump hadn't appeared since his late-night strategy meeting. Barron hadn't been seen since the on-camera moment that still hadn't been publicly addressed. That silence was now louder than anything Crockett had said. In a low-lit restaurant in Des Moines, 3 major Republican donors met for dinner. None ordered food, too busy deciding what to do next. One of them, the youngest, tapped his glass. "It's over. Whether charges come or not." People saw the kid break. They saw her pull back the curtain. They won't forget it. Back at the Capitol, Jasmine exited the chamber alone. Security detail flanked her as cameras lit up. "Congresswoman, do you believe the president will be indicted? Will you testify before DOJ if asked? Are you afraid for your safety?" She didn't answer. Not yet, but a reporter caught her pausing briefly before entering her vehicle. She turned to one camera. "I'm not afraid. I've seen worse than paper trails. This isn't about being brave. It's about telling the truth before someone else decides to rewrite it." That clip went viral too. At DOJ headquarters, internal memos began circulating, assigning specific case leads to audit the Cayman route. The term 45 Echo had been flagged in their system for months, but nobody had connected it until now. Meanwhile, several prominent Republicans began drafting private statements. Some still defended the president. Others tried hedging, urging Americans to wait for facts. But the facts weren't hiding anymore. They'd been read aloud, one by one, in front of the country. The pressure was too high to contain. Crockett sat alone in her car as it pulled away. For a moment, she stared out the window in silence. Rena leaned over from the passenger seat. "You think they'll try spinning this into just another political witch hunt?" Jasmine didn't blink. "Of course, but it's too late for spin when people have already made up their minds." But what nobody realized, not even Jasmine, was that the true impact wasn't coming from Washington anymore. It was coming from living rooms, classrooms, and backyards where people had started thinking for themselves again. 4 days later, Jasmine Crockett sat across from journalist Leah Brinkman in a modest interview studio outside Philadelphia. No makeup team, no lights in her face. Just 2 chairs, a microphone, one camera streaming live to over 3 million viewers across multiple platforms. Leah leaned forward. "Congresswoman, you've been called a disruptor, a threat, a hero, a problem solver. How do you see yourself?" Jasmine took a breath, then calmly, "None of those. I'm someone who paid attention when others didn't." That's it. She didn't speak like a politician. No talking points. No memorized sound bites. Just raw sentences with weight. "What pushed you to go forward with the hearing?" Leah asked. Jasmine looked straight into the camera. Not at Leah. "Because I got tired of watching people lie on paper in public and pretend the rest of us didn't see it. You can't ask folks to trust institutions if the people inside them are playing games with the truth. You can't demand loyalty to a flag while stealing behind the curtain." Back in Austin, a high school history teacher paused the interview clip in his classroom. "This," he said, pointing to the screen, "is what accountability looks like." And it didn't come from the top. It came from a seat in the middle row where someone decided enough was enough. On a radio station in Detroit, a caller named Carmen broke down crying while talking about how Crockett reminded her of her grandmother who used to tape court hearings and play them back during dinner. "She never raised her voice," Carmen said, "but she always told the truth." Just like Jasmine. Back in the interview, Leah asked, "Do you think there's still time to repair what's broken?" Jasmine didn't answer right away. Then, "That depends on us. On what we're willing to forgive. On what we demand moving forward. But let me say this. Secrecy is the currency of the powerful. Transparency is what the people are owed." The clip hit another nerve. That evening, as DOJ confirmed that a special counsel had officially been appointed and new subpoenas began flying across Capitol Hill, Jasmine Crockett boarded a plane back to Dallas. Her district was waiting. But this time, so was the whole country. At the gate, a woman in her 70s approached quietly. She wore a faded blazer, carried a worn purse tucked under her arm. "I watched you," she said, voice steady. "I didn't think anyone would speak up again. Not after all these years." Jasmine smiled faintly. "What made you think that?" The woman shook her head. "Because the truth stopped mattering for a while. But maybe it's coming back now." Jasmine didn't reply. She didn't have to. Somewhere in Charlotte, a group of college students organized voter registration drives using hashtag #TruthBeforeTribes. In Kansas City, A church congregation held community teaching on whistleblower protection laws, citing Crockett's hearing as case study. In Portland, two rival city council members, one progressive, one conservative, co-authored public letters urging constituents to read every page of Crockett's evidence packet before forming opinions. The ripple had begun. But this one wasn't political. It was personal. People weren't just asking, is Trump guilty? They were asking, what else have we been told to ignore? As Crockett returned home, she found a crowd waiting outside her office. Not to protest, to thank her. Students, seniors, activists, lawyers, and more than a few strangers who just wanted to shake her hand. She didn't give a speech. She didn't hold a press conference. She stood with them quietly, letting the moment breathe. Because that was the lesson. Not about left or right. Not about loyalty or legacy. But about the weight of truth. What it costs to tell it. And what it costs to ignore it. If there's a takeaway from this story, it's this: silence only protects the guilty. And the longer you stay quiet, the harder it becomes to speak when it really matters. So maybe it's time we all start asking better questions, demanding better answers, and recognizing that courage doesn't always shout. Sometimes it reads the fine print and refuses to look away. If this story meant something to you, take a moment. Subscribe to the channel, share it, and most of all, talk about it. Truth only survives when we carry it together.